And
Yep.
we're going to go out to the Toyota of Hollywood guest line. Shop hundreds of Toyotas indoors in one of America's largest showrooms at Toyota of Hollywood on 441 between Hollywood and Sheridan. The Miami Herald's Miami Heat beat reporter Anthony Chiang joining us here on the show. What's going on, man? How are you?
I'm good. How are you guys?
I'm good,
We're
buddy.
good. Is it fodder season for you too?
Yeah, I'm not used to being done this early, actually.
Right.
Really, the last 4 years have been working up until now, so this is new for me. So I'm trying to fill space here.
Let me ask you this.
Is
Bam Adebayo up to something? Is he up to something, dude? Does he know something? Is he up to something? Because I'm going on every tweet. I'm going on every post. I see this Donovan Mitchell stuff over the weekend. Is Bam Adebayo up to something?
Bam Adebayo has a lot of friends around the league. I'll leave it at that.
Everybody loves Bam, right?
Everybody loves Bam. He's probably one of the more popular all-stars when it comes to just Q rating around the NBA, right? Like everybody just loves him. Kevin Durant, Donovan Mitchell, Jason Tatum, even the Celtics guys love Bam.
Yeah.
So it's just, is he he has Team USA this year. So there'll be a chance for him to recruit there. I'll say this, Bam, he might not admit it publicly, but he's not afraid of recruiting if that's what it takes. So we kind of saw him joking about it a little bit on Twitter, and that's what we were referring to, Tobin, a few days ago.
I felt like I feel like him and Udonis Haslem are in cahoots, especially on the first take stuff where UD's calling cap on Donovan Mitchell signing his extension. So I'm like, yeah, these guys they're trying to get this plan together. I feel like they're not gonna let us they don't want another summer going by with an empty recruiting pitch like it was with Dame.
So Anthony, can you settle an argument or that we've been having?
Mm-hmm.
I think watching the last four teams in the playoffs, that the Heat don't have that, right? They have Jimmy, who does a lot of different things that those guys don't. But I'm talking about two guys that can get you 25, 30 on any night. Like, there's guys that can do it for the Heat, but you never know which guy it's going to be.
Right.
Not consistently. So they need scoring. They need a bona fide scorer. And Tobin says, we got that with Jimmy. We just need to add something with Jimmy.
Yeah, I think the Heat would admit that, right? I mean, that's why you've seen them go after Damian Lillard. They went after Kevin Durant. They know they need another offensive talent. I mean, they've been a bottom 10 offense the last 2 years. And yes, 2 seasons ago, they made it to the finals. They caught fire. They hit a historic rate of threes in the playoffs. And you can't bank on that every year. They need another guy who's a natural scorer who could get you 20, 25, 30 in playoff games, right? And Bam does it too, but for Bam and Jimmy, it's not, at least up until this year, it's not by 3-pointers, right? It's just hard baskets, getting into the paint, drawing fouls. You need a guy who's going to be explosive and can go off for 30 on 12 shots, right? By hitting 5 or 6 threes. Like they just don't have a guy who can do that consistently. And I think that he would admit as much. And you've kind of seen it with their actions of going after these elite scorers around the league, because they know we have a top 10 defense. Spoken coaches way into a top 10 defense, right? But we need to have a better offense to really compete at that championship level.
So you had a report off of the report from Philly the other day about Sixers are willing to pay Jimmy his max. This is the big looming question over the summer. You say, your report said there were multiple teams that would be willing to give him that max. How much of a divide do you think there is here right now, Anthony? Because obviously Pat Riley publicly puts up not really in a hurry to do it. Jimmy's side, I imagine once they are eligible, they want that as soon as possible. So where do you think we're at with this whole Jimmy Butler situation?
Look, all I can go by is what Pat said earlier this month, and it didn't seem like he was ready to give Jimmy that extension, right? I mean, maybe they've changed their mind. Maybe it was posturing. I don't know. We're going to find out July 7th, when's the first day they could present Jimmy with that extension. If they offer it to him, we'll find out that day. But I do know that Jimmy wants that extension. He feels like he's earned it. You can definitely make a strong case that he's earned it, right? With he's already one of the best players in Heat history. This is one of the best eras in Heat history, even though they haven't won a championship. They've been so successful, and he's been for sure the catalyst behind it all. Obviously, he's had help with Bam and everything, but Jimmy's been the best player on the team throughout this whole era. So we're going to see where the Heat stands in about 6-7 weeks. Again, the Heat, you know this, Tobin. They're not going to leak things through the media. All we can go by is what Pat Riley said a few weeks ago, and based on what he said, it didn't seem like they were, not like the last time when Jimmy was eligible for the extension, where they just gave it to him on the first day. That doesn't sound like that's going to be the case. Maybe it will. Maybe they can, they wait to see what happens with Donovan Mitchell, what happens in free agency, how things shake out, and they come to the conclusion, well, this is our best option. We extend the window by a year, we give them the contract, and we see what happens. But if I don't have that answer right now, because I don't even know if the Heat know. They might be waiting to see what happens with Donovan Mitchell and other guys.
Do you think, go ahead, Leroy.
You think? I think the thing that I took from everything that Pat said, right? Fair or unfair.
Mm-hmm.
I'm tired of guys playing 60 games a year.
For sure.
Like, that was the message that I got. And for whatever reason, right? You're talking about two of your best players in Tyler and Jimmy that miss a lot of games during the season. And what that does do, it puts more pressure on Bam. So when these two guys aren't playing, you're now running Bam into the ground. I mean, and Pat just seemed like he's had enough of it. So go and ask Pat for an additional year after what just happened. I mean, he's going to kind of maybe push back a little bit.
Yeah. And the crazy thing is, too, to that point, is this is not the first year Jimmy's done this, right? I mean, he's missed 15, 20 games pretty much every year that he's been here, but he's been healthy for the playoffs.
Right.
And it's easier to ignore the regular season when he's leading you with a Michael Jordan type playoff run to the Eastern Conference Finals or NBA Finals. But this year, where it wasn't his fault, someone just fell on his leg, right? And he sprained his MCL and he couldn't play. And then you lose in 5 games to Boston in the first round. Like, feelings are going to be a little bit different. So again, this isn't the first time Jimmy's handled the regular season this way. And again, there were some real injuries. There were some times he took the third game. I know everyone points to the third game of the season where it was a back-to-back and he took it off for rest. But there was a foot injury. There was some knee stuff. Like, there were some real injuries. But I think the hope is, if they're going to invest that type of money in Jimmy, that he's going to play 65. I think Pat Riley said, like, just give me 70 games. Just give me 70 games. I'll take 70 games at this point. Right. But yeah, the feeling is like they never got to see what this team could really do. You can make an argument that beside Boston, if the Heat is healthy, the Heat might have the second best roster in the East. That's not crazy to say.
Well,
they didn't get that team this year.
That's the funny thing about it, because Pat Riley has, the comment about telling, Jimmy not to talk about it if you're not on the court. But like, Jimmy Butler probably looks at how the East plays out, and I don't feel like he thinks he's wrong. I think Jimmy Butler probably watches how the East plays out. It's unfortunate what happened with his injuries, but I think he probably thinks to himself, yeah, see, this is what it turned out to be. If I would have been there, I don't now, maybe not, playing Boston right out of the gate. I don't know, but I don't think he looks at how the East plays out and thinks to himself, if I was out there and I was me, I still would have beaten them, because he has. So I think that confidence is probably there from him.
I think Pat's annoyed that they're in the play in the last 2 years, regardless of what the result. You have these guys play 5 more games and you're a 4 seed. Just 5 more games and win 3 out of 5, and you're a 4 or 5 seed. Yeah, and I think being that close has to be frustrating for him.
Yeah, and they don't feel like this is a play-in roster, right? And it really isn't. I mean, it isn't. When this roster is whole, they're not a play-in team. They shouldn't be a play-in team. And I think that's part of the frustration of, like, why can't we set ourselves up and put ourselves in better position for success in the playoffs, instead of facing this uphill climb and just think, oh, we'll just take care of it in April and May, right? And it happened 2 years in a row, and this year they weren't able to overcome the odds because the injury issues extended into the playoffs, and Jimmy just wasn't available. And again, I think Jimmy, Bam, and Tyler, maybe played like 20 something games together. Like, you just never got, and then we throw Terry in there, those 3 plus Terry, I think it was 10 games together. We just never got to see this team whole. And I know fans don't want to hear that. They want to see changes. And I understand this will be year 6 of this era, like, without a championship. But the fact of the matter is, like, it's also true that we don't know what this team can be because they never got a sustained stretch together.
Well, I think that's the interesting thing here that they probably have to ask themselves too with the Jimmy thing is like, have they reached the peak, right? Like it's, Bam is an age that, is way younger than Jimmy. Do they think to themselves like, has this duo just hit their peak and do we move in a different direction? So I don't even know how much of it is like, we don't want to pay Jimmy as opposed to, do we now want to give all the keys to Bam? Like how much do you think that could be the mindset going into the summer?
Yeah, I think that's part of it, right? Like this is the point where you could say we could pivot right now if we wanted to, right? Like this is the decision. Do we extend the window and say we think this is enough to continue to compete for championships? And do we give Jimmy that extra year and make this create this 3-year window with these guys and go all in? But then you're faced with restrictions with the new CBA, right? Like already this year, you're probably not going to bring back Caleb Martin. To make an addition, you're probably gonna have to make a trade. All you have is minimum contracts to offer outside free agents because of where you are. So you have to be sure that the Bam Jimmy duo is still good enough to compete. Or you say, we're not going to give Jimmy the extension. If he wants to be traded, or if next year he opts out and he becomes a free agent, fine. At least it gives us if we make the trade, we get draft picks back, we get draft capital back, and then we can make a run at somebody else who becomes available because we have more capital. Or Jimmy becomes a free agent next year and you have cap space. And you pivot and you build around Bam. I think this is right now, this decision they're going to make this offseason will tell us kind of what direction they're going in, which I think probably fans want at this point because it feels like they've been bridging probably 2 timelines, right? With the Jimmy timeline and the Bam timeline. It seems like this offseason, they're going to have to pick one.
How much do you think Jimmy Butler is, I guess, the same guy that he was? Because I think with the Jimmy Butler not paying him, everybody goes back to Minnesota days of him is going to show up to the practice and take G leaguers and make a big stink and have Rachel Nichols waiting there for a big national interview. But I mean, it is 7 years ago. Like, it's not like he's the same age and guy. So how much do you think the Heat are wary of Jimmy Butler really making a stink? Or do you feel like a lot of that this can be still cordial, even if they are bucking against the idea of giving him his money?
I think, I don't know how things will change over the next few months or how negotiations will go, right? It could get messy. It could not get messy. But I would project right now that Jimmy has so much respect for the Heat organization. And he's said it publicly. He's made it known privately. Like, he has so much respect for this team. I would be surprised if he made this into what the Minnesota Timberwolves situation was. I would think if they don't get the extension, then yes, I'm sure Jimmy won't be happy with that. That's obvious, right? Anybody would assume that. But I would expect that he would just play out the year, show up to camp, do what he has to do. It's actually going to be a prove-it year to him to a certain extent because if he does opt out next year and become a free agent, to get the money he wants, he's going to have to play good this season, right? He can't miss 30 games and then expect to get a max contract. So we'll have some motivation as well. So I would expect that he would go about his business and do what he needs to do it and won't make this messy. Now, the fact now that we know there are other teams out there that will give him the max contract, the question is, and if the Heat don't give it to him, does he say to the Heat, look, I don't want to make this into a thing, but there's other teams willing to give me my money. Can you trade me somewhere that who's willing to give me the contract I want? Again, it's unclear at this point if that would even happen, but that is something you have to consider, right? If there are other teams out there willing to give him the money.
You think there's more pressure on the Heat to make a decision because there are other teams, or it kind of frees them up a little bit, saying that no matter what they decide, they have other options, whether it's to move Jimmy, to get another player. So like I think both sides are in a good place because Jimmy's going to get an extension. I hope it's here, but it might not be. And the Heat, if they decide not to give him the extension, can get something in return.
Sure, it opens up more options, right? But I don't think the Heat's the way they handle this will be impacted by other teams. That's just not the way the Heat do business, right? We know that. Like, they're going to do what they think is right for the team at the moment and what puts them in the best position, not only to win this year, but in the future and puts them in better position, for the coming years ahead during Bam Adebayo's prime, right? So whether that means extending Jimmy, whether that means keeping Jimmy this year and seeing what happens next offseason, or I know, the possibility of trading Jimmy has come up this week. I don't know what it's going to be, but I do know this: the Heat won't let the Sixers or whatever other team that's out there showing, trying to, show Jimmy that they're willing to give him that contract. That won't affect how the Heat handles this. It just, like you said, it does present options for the Heat, which is always good, that they could turn to if needed.
Couple more before we get you out of here, Anthony. Anthony Chiang, Miami Herald, Miami Heat reporter, does a fantastic job. Go follow him at Anthony_Chiang. Bam Adebayo's extension, best guess, is that even a debate for the Heat? Is that Bam, does he want to punt on a year because he's going to try and get more accolades? Where do you think that heads for this summer?
I'm not sure. I assumed entering the offseason that it would just get done this year, but he was third place for Defensive Player of the Year. He's one of the guys who got votes for All NBA but didn't make it. There's a chance he could be Supermax next year, right? So if you're Bam, do you take the chance and wait it out? Like, even like, you know, knock on wood, right? Even if he gets injured this season, is that going to make the Heat not give him a max contract next year? Probably not, right? Like, so he could wait. He could wait and see see if he could get the Supermax next year. It's a big difference in the contract. So I wouldn't be surprised if he waits, but I also wouldn't be surprised if he just says, let's get it done this year and let's get it over with, and let's lock myself into this contract entering next season.
And finally, have you seen Nikola Jović being swole with his Serbian trainer?
I have not seen it, but I have heard you talk about it.
Oh, dude. J-Fig, bring that picture up for Anthony here. Let's because this guy, I mean, he looks like the most Serbian trainer.
Anthony,
ever.
welcome to my world.
He looks like the most Serbian trainer, but like I'm like, oh, look at this. Already getting into the lab for the Olympics this year.
Marco said he looks like it's a gym at the La Quinta Inn.
It looks like the LA Fitness I go to. Yeah. Good for Niko. That's what he wants, right? They want him to be putting that work in, getting stronger. If he's going to be the power forward of the future next to Bam, he needs to continue to bulk up. He did that this year. We saw the results. So good for Niko. It's a good sign.
Have you ever used the term munyon?
I have not. What's that?
Start using
it.
You want to play Anthony, our new favorite artist, Marco, so he can just be aware of how to use this, because we have learned from Jalen Ramsey today that Jalen Waddle got a whole lot of munyon.
Yeah, we got a lyrical expertise here, Anthony. Break this down for us, please.
All right.
I know I'm little as hell, but I got a big ass gun. We ahead of the block with this chopper, make him run. No slick, got a few hitmans. Know that money on get it done. So my move come on, I wipe and know the head.
Here we go.
That's in your next article. Your next article, you write, I want you to incorporate.
I still don't know what it means, but
yeah. Right now, the Heat are in a battle with Jimmy Butler on just how much munyon they're going to be.
Okay. I get it.
Yeah.
We're not sure if Jimmy's going to get his munyon this year. We'll find out. I suppose that is the thing. But yes, if you ever don't have the words for an article,
I'll
just
put that in the headline.
I guess that you could do that in song now.
That'll be my next Jimmy Butler story. I'll credit you guys.
No. Hey, credit him.
I'll credit Leroy.
Credit him.
Exactly. Credit Leroy. Anthony, thanks for the time, man. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Anthony.
Guys. Have a good one. Thank you.
There you go, Anthony Chiang, Miami Herald. Go
You
follow his
couldn't
work.
let it go. We were having good basketball talk.
Munyon, dude.